Please don't forget to introduce yourselves.
Yes, it's Sonomut from NTV. Sorry, Sonomut from NTV Turkey. I have two questions. First is regarding Libya. What is the point where you will think that operation should end? Is it, for example, catching Gaddafi, or when will you decide when the operation will end, at which situation? And are you already planning the after Gaddafi or the aftermath? And my second question is with regard missile defense. There was a lot of harsh criticism today from Iran towards Turkey, because Turkey has decided to deploy and allow radar, etc., etc. So do you have a comment on that, bearing in mind that your headline goal is initial capabilities in Chicago? Thank you.
Thank you. First, on the end state of our operation in Libya. The possible capture of Gaddafi is not the decisive factor. Of course, it's an element, but let me stress that individuals, including Gaddafi, is not a target of our operation. What will play a crucial role is the capability of the National Transitional Council to actually ensure effective protection of the civilian population, because that's the key in our UN mandate, to protect civilians. So, of course, in our assessment, we will attach very strong importance to the capability of the NTC to actually protect the civilian population. The NATO Council will take its decision based on an overall comprehensive political military assessment, including what I've already said, the capacity of the NTC, but of course also our own military assessment, as well as which decisions might be taken by the UN Security Council. So the NATO Council will take its decision based on this broad evaluation. Second question, as regards the agreement to deploy certain missile defense facilities in Turkey. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Turkish government on that agreement. I consider that agreement a crucial element in the development of the NATO-based missile defense system that we approved at the NATO summit in Lisbon. And let me stress that our missile defense system, the NATO missile defense system, is a purely defensive system. It's not an offensive system directed against anyone, except for those who might have an intention to attack NATO territory. So it's a missile defense, and I stress the word defense.
Egyptian TV.
Thank you very much. I'm Magdi Youssef from Nile News, Egyptian television. Secretary General, like you said, according to the resolution 1973, your aim is protecting the civilian in Libya. And now your strike is still on. Here I'm wondering, you are protecting the civilian from whom, since Gaddafi has no control anywhere in Libya? And the second, do you have any conversation or dealing with the Libyan authority now to help in finding Gaddafi, or you are not doing anything in this? Thank you very much.
First of all, let me once again stress that individuals, including Gaddafi, are not targets for our operation in Libya. We are in Libya to protect civilians against any attack. Unfortunately, we have seen that Gaddafi forces still constitute a threat to the civilian population in Libya. And this is a reason why we have to continue our operation until these threats do not exist any longer. And that leads me to the first part of your question. Who are you protecting? We are protecting civilians against all attacks. And as I said, we have unfortunately seen that this threat still exists, and this is the reason why we are continuing our operation.
AP.
Yes, Secretary General, at the start of this campaign, you made a big deal about the need for regional cooperation for the Arab League and the Organization of African Union to support you in this campaign. I notice now you've completely left them out. Is this because the African Union has been actually, quite hostile to the campaign and has said that your unrelenting bombing has actually detracted from efforts to achieve a peaceful solution?
I didn't quite catch the question, but let me stress that we have not sidelined the African Union. On the contrary, I attended the meeting in Paris on Libya, and the African Union was represented, and so was a number of African countries. And we still attach a strong importance to a regional engagement from the Arab League, from the African Union, from individual countries in the region. And I'm very pleased to see a still stronger support for the National Transitional Council, also from the region.
We can take a couple of questions in French. RFI.
Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, Pierre Benazet de Radio France Internationale. Vous dites que l'opération n'est pas terminée, que vous restez jusqu'à ce qu'il n'y ait plus de menaces, que vous ne resterez pas une minute de plus quand cette menace aura disparu. Est-ce que depuis la chute de Tripoli, cette opération en elle-même a déjà changé sur le terrain? Est-ce que vous avez réorienté les frappes vers des régions particulières? Je pense à Sirte et Beni Walid. Qu'en est-il aujourd'hui de la géométrie de l'opération Protecteur Unifié? Où est-ce que vous êtes, sur quoi êtes-vous concentré actuellement? Et est-ce que le nombre de sorties aériennes a changé, diminué, augmenté? Où est-ce qu'on en est actuellement dans l'opération elle-même?
Peut-être vous pouvez répéter l'essence de la question.
Si le micro, oui, voilà. Est-ce que l'opération Protecteur Unifié aujourd'hui est différente de ce qu'elle était il y a 10 jours? Quelles sont les priorités militaires aujourd'hui de l'opération? Comment décrirez-vous ça?
Naturellement, nous avons adapté les opérations en considérant la situation sur place. Mais l'objectif le plus important restera le même, de protéger la population civile contre toutes les attaques.
RTL, at the back.
Oui, Alain Franco, RTL et Radio-Télévision Suisse. Je suis ici. Bonjour. Ce week-end, le journal canadien Globe and Mail a rapporté être en possession de documents indiquant que la Chine était en négociation avec le colonel Kadhafi au mois de juillet pour lui livrer des armes malgré l'embargo et notamment des missiles sol-air visant donc à pouvoir abattre les avions de la coalition pendant leurs opérations. Je voudrais savoir si vous avez des informations en ce sens et si cela se confirmait, quelle serait votre analyse et votre commentaire si la Chine donc essayait de vendre effectivement à Kadhafi des armes pour abattre les avions de l'OTAN. Merci.
Je n'ai aucune information en ce qui concerne la position chinoise, mais j'ai compris que la Chine a refusé issu en démenti, mais je n'ai aucune information.
Okay, German television. You've got the microphone next to your seat.
I finally found it. Ken Iglersham, German television, ZDF. Secretary General, at the same time when there were reports that China supplied...
Could you speak a bit louder, please?
Yeah, is it better that way? When China was supposed to try to deliver weapons to the pro-Gaddafi forces, there were news that France delivered weapons to the anti-Gaddafi forces. Well, part of the NATO mission was the arms embargo. Did NATO know anything about France delivering weapons to the anti-Gaddafi forces? This is my question number one. And then we had the rebels asked for a ceasefire, or for the other side to give their weapons, hand over their weapons to end this war. But at the same time, NATO was bombing 3 cities in the southeast of Tripolis. So was it part of the tactics to go on with the bombs and at the same time offer a ceasefire or handing over the weapons? I don't understand the strategy behind that.
Well, first, as far as France is concerned, NATO has not been informed about such deliveries of weapons. We got information afterwards when this issue was discussed in the media and in the public. And I understand that the purpose of this operation was to actually protect civilians against attacks from the Gaddafi forces. But let me stress once again, it has not been part of the NATO operation.
Wall Street Journal. Can you repeat the question? It wasn't very clear, actually, what the question was.
I will try to make it a little bit more clear. The rebels offered a ceasefire, or offered the other side to hand over the weapons in Sirte and wherever it was. But at the same time, we got the reports from NATO that NATO was bombing in the southeast of Tripoli. So I wonder myself, what is the strategy behind that? If you are bombing at the same time and offering a ceasefire, normally at first you say there won't be any shooting anymore, and then you have the chance to hand over your weapons. Or do I see that incorrectly?
First of all, let me stress that we appreciate all efforts to find a peaceful solution to what might be left of this conflict. And I think the NTC has demonstrated a very responsible approach to solving this conflict by offering the remnants of the Gaddafi regime or the Gaddafi forces a peaceful solution. So that's my first point. Secondly, as far as NATO operations are concerned, we continue as long as we believe there is a threat against the civilian population. So we're very careful in conducting our operation in strict conformity with the UN mandate, and as long as a threat against the civilian population exists, we will continue our operation. And there's no contradiction between the protection of civilians according to the UN mandate and the NTC efforts to find a peaceful solution on the ground.
Wall Street Journal.
Good afternoon. So the focus of the story has very much been on Europe, Europe leading from Europe leading, Europe leading from behind, etc. And it seems like in the rest of Chicago there will be a sort of report card on European defense. And you talked about wanting to lobby for smart defense. And you mentioned refueling and drones and intelligence as three areas where perhaps European allies were a little bit deficient. And it's no secret that this effort has exposed holes elsewhere. Can you go as far as possible in telling us about your own report card and maybe list some areas where European allies are particularly strong and where they're perhaps weaker? You mentioned three of them. And how the process and the kind of thinking will go into the meeting in Chicago. And again, like what your report card right now looks like.
To the list I mentioned, I could add transport capacity. That's not directly related to the Libya operation, but a more general challenge to make sure that also European forces become more mobile. I really, personally, I think it's one of the weaknesses of European armed forces that we lack the strategic airlift capacity. So I could add that to the list I have already outlined. And all these issues will be dealt with within the concept of smart defense. The NATO command transformation, Allied Command Transformation, which is located in Norfolk, the US, is currently working on a paper where they identify a number of areas that could potentially be subject to multinational cooperation. So what we will try from now until May next year is to identify a number of areas in which a group of countries could pool and share resources. And hopefully, at the NATO summit in Chicago, we could identify a number of lead nations that would carry forward these projects. So this initiative will build on what we decided in Lisbon last year. As you may recall, we adopted a paper on critical capabilities. We had identified 11 priority areas where we will focus our defense investments in the coming years, including missile defense, cyber defense, counter roadside bombs, etc., etc. So all in all, it will be a comprehensive defense package that will contribute to make more efficient use of our resources, but also aim at narrowing the economic and technological gap between the United States and Europe. That's my ambition.
And where does Europe get good grades? In Libya?
Yeah, but I think the Libya operation has demonstrated that despite the period of economic austerity, despite defense cuts in a number of countries, maybe all countries, it was possible for European allies and Canada to provide the majority of assets for our Libya operation, aircraft, strike aircrafts, and also the maritime assets. All maritime assets were provided by Canada and European allies, and aircrafts, including the strike aircraft, were provided by Canada, European allies, and partners in the region. So there is absolutely a positive lesson to be learned, but the whole operation has also made it visible that there are some gaps to be filled, and that will be a focal point from now until Chicago.
EU observer.
Varnapar from The Observer. Mr. Rasmussen, to what extent are you in contact with the EU envoys in Libya, and how do you see the role, or is there sort of a plan to transition and to hand over once you will decide that the mission is over, sort of to help further the EU presence there? And the second question, if I may, just briefly, on the 9/11 commemoration this week, sort of what are the lessons learned, and what you still feel the need for Europe to do in fighting against terrorism? Thank you.
Firstly, I have had a regular contact with the European Union during this Libya crisis, with all institutions, including, of course, High Representative Ashton. So we have closely coordinated. We have also had close staff-to-staff contacts to make sure that we work with each other in a complementary way. I expect that coordination to continue, and I would strongly appreciate if the European Union could take on a major role in assisting the National Transitional Council and the Libyan people in the reconstruction of Libya. Yeah, maybe the term reconstruction is not appropriate, because for the new authorities in Libya, it's really to build from scratch what has been demolished by the former regime. It's for the Libyan people, it's for the National Transitional Council to shape the future of Libya, but if they request assistance from abroad, I do believe that the European Union could and should play an important role. And also in that respect, I'm pleased to see how closely we have coordinated through this whole crisis. As regards the 11th of September, I think we all agree that what happened 10 years ago really changed the perception of security. Very important steps were taken in the wake of this horrific attack on the United States. As far as NATO is concerned, we evoked Article 5 for the first time in the history of our alliance. European allies and Canada agreed that the attack on the United States should be considered an attack on all, as is stated in Article 5. And this is basically also the reason why we are engaged in Afghanistan today, and will continue with the aim to prevent the country from once again becoming a safe haven for terrorists. And now we're in the process of handing over the responsibility to the Afghan security forces. But of course, a number of other measures have been taken. It is also part of this story that many countries have introduced, I would say, heavy control measures to make sure that they can protect their populations effectively. And of course, this is all the time a delicate balance to protect the freedom we believe in, and at the same time to make sure that people in our countries can continue to live their lives in security and safety. So in many ways, what happened 10 years ago has changed our lives, but the bottom line is that I do believe that today we have a safer world than we had 10 years ago. Though we have seen terrorist attacks since 9/11, the overall picture is that the international terror networks have been significantly degraded since 2001, and that's the good news.
We have only a few minutes left. Frankfurter Allgemeine.
Nicolas Busse, Frankfurter Allgemeine. It now seems that there will be no international peacekeeping mission in Libya, mostly because the Transitional Council doesn't want one. Do you think this is a good development? Will the country be stable enough without an international presence?
Yes, I do believe that it is the new authorities in Libya that have the major responsibility to shape the future of the country, including secure the Libyan people. So it's also my firm belief that any international presence under UN leadership in Libya should be based on a clear request from the new authorities in Libya. And I'm confident that the National Transitional Council will be able to ensure that the transition to democracy in Libya can take place in a peaceful manner and based on a spirit of reconciliation. And I'm confident that the National Transition Council will respect the basic principles of human rights, the rule of law, and democracy, and I do believe they have a sincere desire to see the development of a true democracy in Libya. Having said that, I would reiterate that the international community has clearly stated its preparedness to assist the NTC and the Libyan people in this transformation if requested, and that statement was reiterated at the Paris meeting last week. But first and foremost, it's for the NTC to take the lead.
One final question that goes to the BBC.
Secretary General Chris Morris, BBC. I know you've answered questions many times before about whether you have exceeded your mandate to protect civilians in Libya, and you have a well-rehearsed answer to it. So perhaps I could ask you something specific. Given the current balance of forces, can you explain how a tank or a rocket launcher in a place like Sirte or Bani Walid, operated by pro-Gaddafi forces, is more of a threat to civilians than a tank or a rocket launcher operated by opposition forces who may be about to attack either of those places?
The fact is that the NTC forces have been very, very careful to avoid civilian casualties. We have no reason to believe whatsoever that the NTC forces constitute a threat to the civilian population in Libya. And I think their recent initiatives to find peaceful solutions to the remaining conflict testifies to that cautiousness. So that's my clear point of departure, that the NTC forces do not constitute such a threat to the civilian population, contrary to what we have seen from Gaddafi forces and the remnants of the regime. Not long ago, they actually fired a Scud missile from one of their strongholds. So as long as we consider these Gaddafi forces to constitute a threat towards the civilian population, we will continue our operation. Of course, we will be very, very careful in identifying legitimate military targets, but now and then we see such movements that could constitute a threat to the civilian population, and in that case, it is in full accordance with the UN mandate to hit such targets.
Thank you very much.